Okay, so I don't know if you guys know this, but you can shrink these, right, and open them back up. So I shrunk mine just to make it easier so I don't have to scroll all the way down the page. But I'm going to go to my student view, make sure that the settings are right for this. So when I was out on Friday, and I apologize for the short notice, I had a migraine headache and woke up late. So it was like a double whammy. So even my kid didn't go to school on Friday. He was uber happy. So I woke up too late to put him on the bus. And I wasn't driving anywhere. I don't even actually remember posting an announcement for you guys. That's how bad my... Yeah. So I usually try my best to like warn you guys ahead of time as best I can. But life happens. So one of the things that I wanted you guys to do was at least read these 2 web pages. So I really hope for your sake you did, right? Because they are an excellent summary of the immune system. And so I think I had put them in a previous announcement, right, before I got sick. But they're also an assignment because I want to make sure that you actually read them. So if you go to our module, I don't know why it's not showing up, but because I didn't shrink them in my student mode, I got to scroll all the way down. So immunology web pages. So they're on the Nobel Prize website actually. Really amazing with cute little pictures and stuff, and I usually steal them and put them in my PowerPoint presentation later on. And then there's even a little game that goes along with it. Of course, you can try that if you're a gaming type person. I'm not very good at that. There's apparently a second level, which I didn't know until I assigned it to my students because I can't get past the first level. But, it's kind of fun if you like that kind of thing. So you'll notice that it says right here, submit assignment. It says, write 2 things you like about these pages. Basically, I just want to know that you read them. Okay? Right? So this is an easy assignment. If you haven't done it yet, right, you still have time to get it done. I guess I put it due on Sunday. I didn't mean to do that. But you know me. I'm not insane about my deadlines except for exams. Just get it done. Okay? And I would have told you guys to do it in class on Friday, but I wasn't here. So, but you just click submit assignment and a text entry box opens up down below, right? And then you can just type. If you're going to write a lot, which you don't have to, but if you want to, that's fine. Because the more you write, the better for you guys, the more you know. Which you'll notice I've changed my PowerPoint style from this point forward. Make you guys write some more. Right? So hopefully you'll learn this stuff as you go. So then once you write your stuff in, or you could write it in Word and then paste and copy it in, right? The reason I say that is if you're going to write a lot, if you lose your internet connection, this does not save as you go, right? You will lose everything you typed. I've done this and lost everything I've typed. So I'm just forewarning you guys because there's another one you'll do later. So then you just click submit assignment, right? And then, of course, that's something I actually have to grade. So here I'll just write a bunch of Mobo Jobo, because I don't think it would even let me hit submit because I didn't write anything. There we go. So then you'll see under grades, you'll see I think a little T to let you know that you submitted it. Yep. But then I have to actually grade it. It's only worth 2 points, but it's 2 very important points when you're counting points.
But it was definitely not 2 things. It was like 6 pages of notes.
That's fine. You'll definitely get your 2 points.
Well, I was worried because I don't have to go back and... No. You can write as much or as little as you want, right? If you write more, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that because then that really lets me know that you really read it, okay? And that will benefit you in the long run. I won't necessarily read the whole thing, but, Okay. So as it relates to, and I'm going to talk about some other stuff, but I want to get through this lecture so that we stay on track. So I am literally following your book now.
right? So that should, one, help you guys out. Two, you'll notice that basically the fact check questions are our objectives. So, I mean, I'm not kidding you. I'm going right straight from your book now, right? So when I tell you to read it, hopefully you will actually start doing that because it'll make it even more simple for you to follow along. I'm also going to do what's called didactic PowerPoints. That means where I'm going to have spaces that are blocked out. The information's there, right? If you watch it in presentation mode and you click on it, the little boxes disappear, right? But the reason for that, again, is I want you guys writing. I don't necessarily need you to write during class. You can fill it in after class as you're reviewing, right? See how much you remember. You do based on what works for you, right? But this stuff, do not wait till 2 days before the test to study it. I can guarantee you right now you're going to fail. And then you're going to be a very unhappy person. Because I don't think anybody wants to fail. Okay? You got to study this stuff as we go. Right? So as soon after this lecture as possible, review this material. And the way I'm going to be lecturing should definitely help you guys do that. So what the whole main big topic for our next unit is immunology, right? How our immune systems work. So we're constantly bombarded by microorganisms. You breathe them in all the time. You eat them. They're on your skin. They're already in your intestines, right? We're constantly being assaulted by them. Why is it that we don't get sick? Why aren't we sick every single day of our lives? Why? Our immune system, our defenses, right? And for vertebrates like ourselves, and this is the only section we're not going to cover in this chapter, is the very last section that talks about invertebrates. We're going to stick to vertebrates. We subdivide the immune system into two components. We talk about the innate, which is sometimes also referred to as the non-specific. Can someone close the door? I think that's Dr. Smith talking. It's confusing me. Somebody else. And that's what this chapter focuses on. The next chapter that we're going to cover is adaptive. And what do you think of when I say adaptive? What's another adjective that would help explain adaptive? Change, right? Change, right? So that one has the ability to change over time. And that's what really sets us apart from other non-vertebrate animals, is this second component that we have that they don't have, right? Is this adaptive immune response, which is pretty awesome. So what is meant by the term immune? Right? Most of us say you're resistant, but what does that really mean? It means you can't get sick, right? Or you've been sick and you can't get sick again from that same thing, right? When someone says immune, right? I'm immune to that, right? So there's a lot of people that are immune to measles that are much older than me, and the reason why they are is because they actually had measles when they were a kid, right? People in their 50s and older, before we had vaccination, right, actually got the infection. And vaccination is something we're going to talk about too, and how it works as it relates to our immune system. So you can be what's called passively resistant by nature. So the example they give in your book is dogs can't get HIV. Well, what does HIV stand for again? Human immunodeficiency virus. So right there, right, we know it's a human virus. It's not another animal like a poor dog. But we know stuff about viruses, right? What's the first thing that has to happen for a virus to cause an infection? You're saying it, I think. Attachment, right? It must attach. What does it attach to? Protein receptors on the cell they infect, right? Are the receptors on the surface of our cells different than probably a dog? Yeah. And so that's why he's immune, right? Because the first thing that needs to happen can't happen, is attachment. That's how he's naturally immune. to that particular virus. Now, of course, you know, we can get parvo, you know. People don't get parvovirus though, right? Because again, we don't have the same receptors. You can actively mount an immune response. So in the case of measles, right? You can mount a response, you can clear that from your system. You can have memory of that, and that's one of the amazing, awesome things about the adaptive component of our immune response. So that the next time you're exposed, you don't even get sick, right? You are immune. So what are some things that are foreign agents that can cause disease that we refer to as pathogens, right? Pathogen means it has the ability to cause disease. So viruses we just mentioned, right? Those can cause disease. What are else that are foreign that can get into our bodies that we want to be able to defend against? Bacteria. What else? Bacteria is a big one. Virus is a big one. Think about other small stuff. Something that might be in your drinking water. Fungi. Not necessarily in drinking water, but in the air probably. Amoebas, right, which are protozoa, right? Worms, parasitic worms, right? Although we focus on bacteria, right, viruses, toxins that are produced, right, by whether it be animals or bacteria, and then also cancer cells, right? Our own cells behaving badly, we can detect this. They're not necessarily foreign, but they're behaving foreignly, you could say, right? So why do we still get sick, though? If we can defend, why is it that we even get sick to begin with? The immune system gets low and weak. They're going to attach no matter what. Whether we can actually eliminate them depends on how good our immune system is. But the thing is, this is a war, basically, us against them, right? And unfortunately, some of them have adapted such that they evade our immune system. They either overcome or overwhelm our immune system, or they even can destroy components of it, right? The HIV virus destroys part of our immune defense. It destroys T cells. So although we have this defense, right, it's not a perfect system. There are really bad guys out there that have figured out how to evade detection, how to destroy our defenses, and how to just plain overwhelm us, give us more than we can deal with at any one time. The good news is that most of the time we can get it under control, right? We can find them, we can recover. What happens if we don't? We die, right? Yeah, that's the scary thing of it, right? And with viruses, we've got very few antiviral drugs out there. You really are dependent on this awesome system of your immune system to save your ass, literally save your ass. So some terms that they talk about in the book, and I'm going to try and question you guys more and more too, right? So let's think through these two terms. So sterile versus non-sterile immunity. So what does sterile mean to you, first off? What does sterile mean? Clean, right? Clean. So does it have any microbes or viruses if it's sterile? No. So when you get a virus in you, right, and your immune system clears it, kills it, destroys it, eliminates it, would that be sterile immunity if we got rid of it? Yeah. Don't think of sterile as in the entire body. Think of it as it relates to that one thing that infected you. So if you got infected by the virus and your body cleared it, completely, there's no more virus in your body, would that be sterile immunity? Yes, that would be, right? So complete destruction of the virus by the immune system, that's an example of sterile immunity. So non-sterile is the opposite of that. Would mean that it's not gone, right? It's still there. So let's see which one of these you think falls into that non-sterile category. So the next one is the removal of a toxin from the body by a specific antibody response. Well, what's the key word here? Removal, right? So it's gone, right? That toxin's gone, it's not lingering, we got rid of it. Who cares how, but it's gone. So this is sterile immunity again, right? We got rid of it. It's gone. We didn't say anything about it sticking around. Next one, preventing the spread of Mycobacteria tuberculosis by encasing it in tubercules in the lungs. This is non-sterile because we didn't say anything about removing it, right? Instead, we just like packaged it up. We're like, we're just going to stick you in this little cell and try and keep you from going anywhere. And this happens, right? With some infections, right, we don't get rid of it. We just keep it under control. That's non-sterile. So we talked about a virus, a couple of viruses, right, where you don't ever really get rid of it, do you? You guys remember some of them? Herpes, yep, you don't ever get rid of that one. No sterile immunity to herpes. Non-sterile in that case. What other one that can reactivate? Chickenpox, right? And when it reactivates, you're right, we call it shingles. So if you're immunized against, obviously the answer is going to be sterile for the rest of these, but let's just go through them. If you immunize against the poliovirus for the development of a quick immune response to destroy the virus, this is sterile, right? And again, notice the word destroy. We're not talking about it sticking around or staying around. We're going to destroy it. Immune recognition and destruction of the rhinovirus strain to which a person was previously exposed. Again, what's the key there? We've destroyed it, right? We're not talking about anything about it sticking around. Make sense? Everyone understands sterile versus non-sterile now? Pretty simple. Not too complicated. Not yet. So, as I said, we kind of divide up two components of the vertebrate immune response. We talk about innate versus adaptive. And that is because, again, we as vertebrates have this extra level of adaptive. That does not mean that these work separately. They actually work in conjunction with each other. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, the key to our immune system is recognizing self versus non-self. What's foreign, right? The innate is going to do this non-specifically. So what do we mean by that? Non-specific. Where the adaptive, we're going to get very specific in our defense. And this is going to adapt and change over our lifetime. No, if you have a comment, you can comment.
Well, no virus here, just stop. And that is like, okay, well, I'm stopping you, cold.
Right, you as in maybe measles.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. She's right. She's right. So your innate actually means born with. So you're born with this ability, right? All the components that we talk about in the innate is hardwired in. You know how to do this from day one, and actually it's functioning in utero before you're even born. This is your DNA, right? This is your DNA that knows how to make all the components and do all the things of this system. But that's also why it's non-specific. It's more what we call general. Okay? Like she said, viruses in general we defend against. Right? Bacteria in general right? Because there's characteristics that's similar between these things, right? We're going to start getting into some specifics, but, you know, when we talk about bacteria, we categorize them, don't we? Based on some of their characteristics. You guys think of a bacterial characteristic that's a general characteristic that a lot of bacteria have? I hope someone didn't just say nucleus. Because that's a eukaryotic feature, right? And bacteria are prokaryotes. That's like way back. Think about some other characteristic that's correct. So how do we end up with gram-positive versus gram-negative? We stain them, right? And they stain differently because of what substance? You got it. Selma's going to redeem herself. Peptidoglycan, right? So that's a component, right? They'd be on the outer covering of a gram-positive, right? What's that outer membrane component that's different for gram-negatives? They have that extra outer membrane, and they have a component that's abbreviated LPS. What does that stand for? Lipopolysaccharides. So these are general, right? I'm not saying E. coli versus staph, right? We're saying, you know, bacteria in general are going to have lipopolysaccharide or peptidoglycan on their surface, right? So we can generally recognize maybe those components and know that that's bad news versus E. coli 0157, right? That very specific strain of bacteria. Gram-negative bacteria at that. Does that make sense to you guys? Right, so be thinking about that as you read through this chapter and as we talk about these components, right? How they're more generalized than the specifics we're going to get into when we go to adaptive. But it is at the biochemical level, right? So looking at things like peptidoglycan and lipopolysaccharide and small components like that. And this is our first line of defense, right? This is what right away, when they breach the barriers we're going to talk about, this is the component of our immune system that acts first. Most of the time. Especially if it's the first time we've ever seen it. Adaptive, which as I said is only found in vertebrates, this adapts over time. So first it recognizes specific pathogens at the molecular level. So again, you know, we're talking about molecules on their surface. So like E. coli 0157, those specific groups of sugars in their lipopolysaccharide component can be recognized to that level by our adaptive immune system. Right? We can tell the measles virus from the chickenpox virus. Right? At a very molecularly specific level. After our first exposure, we remember. And this is one of the most amazing things about our adaptive immune and why we can use vaccination. Because vaccination can be the initial response, right? The initial exposure. And then whenever we get exposed to it again, we're pulling on our memory of seeing it before. And the great thing about that is when you remember something, you do it faster, right? You talk about muscle memory, right? You have immunological memory, right? So you respond faster and even more aggressively the second, third, fourth time you see this specific pathogen. We're going to be specific now with the adaptive. So unlike innate, you are born with the starting pieces, but these are going to change and be modified over time throughout your life. Right? So it's constantly changing what you can do. So although you wouldn't say this is your immune system, it's important for helping out your immune system. The fact that we have barriers to stop the stuff even getting in. Right? So your skin, your mucous membranes are very protective and just being literally a wall that stops stuff from getting in. But in addition to that, they're kind of not very nice places, right? Especially our skin. Our skin, for the most part, is cool, right? So not warm and cozy for growth. It's dry, and we know all microorganisms need water, right? In essence, it's dry compared to the internal components of our body, right, which are very moist. It's usually acidic, right? And we know pH balance can be bad news for microorganisms, especially acidic pHs. The very outer layer of your skin, it's actually dead, right? What protein is actually in high concentrations in those dead cells? Keratin, right? Which helps, again, protect things from getting in. And you're continually sloughing off. Does anybody know about how often you lose all your epithelial cells? About every 2 days, 48 hours. You completely replace all your epithelial cells. Pretty amazing. So they don't get a whole lot of time to stick around, right? Most of the dust, unfortunately, in your house, most of the time, is your own epithelial cells. That's what the dust mites are eating, right? Are your dead cells. In addition, we produce an oily substance known as sebum. This is unfortunate for the microbes that have adapted to eat this, right? So some microbes can eat this, which is not good. But anyone know why we produce it? Why do we produce that oily substance? We're mammals. What's one of the key features of being a mammal? We're covered in what? Covered in beautiful hair from head to toe, every square inch, right? Even some places where it doesn't grow so long or so prominent, right? You are covered from head to toe in hair. To ease the movement of that hair out of the hair follicle, we produce this oily substance known as sebum, so it will slide out. Otherwise, it get caught up in there. There's actually a purpose to it. The bad news is it can be a source of food for some microorganisms, but the good news is it also is sometimes a deterrent for microorganisms, right? This oily substance that coats our skin is antimicrobial for most microbes. And then sweat, right? What's a component of sweat that makes it antimicrobial? How does it taste? Salty, right? The salt component, right? Probably important for cooling, right? But is also antimicrobial in action. And then we actually have microorganisms that are part of our skin normally that have adapted to these harsh conditions, right? Can survive the salt and the dry and the cool and the fatty acids. Some of them actually can eat the fatty acids, right? Have made that a food source. Some of them even eat the components of sweat. That's why we end up with body odor, right? It's the products that they produce from eating our products that smell bad to us. They fortunately help us too, because they're there basically taking up that spot, eating that food. It excludes pathogens from being able to take up residence there, right? So if you get to school and all the parking spots are taken up, it's going to make it really hard for you to get here, right? Think about those microbes, the bad guys that come along. They're like, there's no spot for me, right? And these guys are eating the buffet before I even got there. It's gone, right? It's gone. So this is sometimes referred to as competitive exclusion, right? So this happens on our skin. Anywhere else in our body where we usually exclude other pathogens because we have so many of our own normal flora taking up that region? Our large intestines. So the other cool thing about our skin is the cells that make up the dermis layer are very tightly connected to one another, So there's nobody squeezing through, right? There's no Red Rover, send Susie right over, right? You ain't busting through. It ain't happening. Right? But does it always stay like this? No. The unfortunate thing is it's not completely impervious, right? We get cuts, we get scrapes, splinters. We do have cuts in the system, right? So we'll talk about the defense on what happens when it breaches this barrier, right? That's when the immune system comes online. But in addition, we have other types of protection in these areas. So the skin, right, our best barrier, it's definitely a wall, right? Nothing's getting in. We have lots of openings, don't we? How are we going to protect these openings, right? How are we going to stop the stuff that gets in all our openings? We have mucus, right? Really ticky, stacky, sticky, gooey stuff, right? That's going to adhere to the microbes and stop the very first thing they need to do, right? Attach. If we stick them in the mucus, then they can't stick to our endothelial cells or epithelial cells. And then we also have antimicrobial substances that we're going to talk about that will specifically attack them. And then again, in some of these areas, we have microbes already there, so it makes it harder for them to take up residency because there's no place for them to hang out and nothing for them to eat. So one of these we've already talked about. You should know the answer to it, but we shall see. And in fact, they actually don't even define it in the chapter. You'd have to look back. What's new to us are defensins. These are proteins that are known as antimicrobial peptides. So they're really small proteins. Anyone know what these do? I think of as little daggers, right? They have the ability to disrupt microbial membranes. So they can literally insert into those membranes and create little pores and openings and weak spots. So they can disrupt microbial membranes. The next one is lysozyme. We've talked about this. And it's most effective against gram-positives because they have a lot of this substance that this enzyme can degrade. What does lysozyme degrade? How do we know that gram-positive are gram-positive? They have a very thick layer of peptidoglycan. Right? Lysozyme degrades peptidoglycan. So in some of your mucus, most of your mucus, right, you have lysozyme. This will chew up, literally degrade peptidoglycan, and of course be most effective against those gram-positives that are just loaded with layer upon layer of peptidoglycan in their cell wall. Lactoferrin, ferrin, what element is that? Ferrous. What's Fe? Iron. It's okay. Iron. Lacto referring to lactation, right? So in our secretions, right, in our mucus, we have a special protein known as lactoferrin, specifically to bind to iron and keep it away from the microbes. Why would we want to keep it away from them? Well, do they need it to grow? You betcha, right? It's one of those on the list that they need. So do we want them to have it? Absolutely not, right? So we have special proteins specifically for keeping iron away from them. But of course, not all microbes does it keep it away from them, right? Because some of them evolved where they could steal it away from lactoferrin. And we have other iron binding compounds that we're going to talk about throughout our bodies. So let's talk about those openings, right, that would be bathed in mucous membranes. So let's start at the top. What's the very first opening? You don't even really think of it as an opening. Your eyes, right? Your eyes. Except the mucus has a special name, doesn't it? It's called what for our eyes? Tears. It's still mucus, right? Next opening, your nose and your mouth enter into what system? Well, your nose is actually meant for your respiratory tract, right? And your mouth is meant for your digestive tract. And then down below's, what's we got? Reproductive. What else? Urination, right? Defecation too, but that's again the end of the digestive tract. And the digestive tract is actually considered an external environment. That it's just a tube that goes straight through your body. The whole thing is actually considered an external environment. So all of these, right, whether it's given a special name or not, are bathed in mucus to be able to trap the microbes, right, and prevent them from entering into our body. Now, like I said, the digestive tract is actually not considered inside your body. It's when it leaves out of the digestive tract that it's considered inside your body. So they list this whole big chart, right, in your book. But a lot of the stuff is repetitive, right? All this stuff has mucus, right? Granted, for the eyes, we call it tears. In our mouth, we call it what? Saliva, right? But let's look at some important differences. So we trap it, right? That's step one. If we trap it in the mucus, eventually it may get out, right? So we need to move that mucus, right? So how do we move the stuff that gets trapped in our tears for our eyes? Right? We use our eyelids. We wash, right? The flushing action of our eyelids. And your eyelids flush it to the lacteal ducts, right, which are right here next to your nose. And that is actually connected to your inner part of your nose, which goes down the back of your throat into your digestive system. That's how we flush it all out. For your digestive system, how do we move stuff through? It just stays there all the time? Peristalsis, right? Muscular contractions of the intestinal tract, continually moving stuff through, right? It moves the mucus right along with all the food you're digesting. Your respiratory tract, this is the tricky one. How do we get stuff out of there? Right, you can cough, but most of the time it's your ciliated epithelial cells that are actually beating and moving that mucus up to guess where? Your throat, so you can swallow it, so it can go out the digestive tract. Your urogenital tract. Yeah, you pee. Yep, that's your best protection, is continually flushing out urination. And for the vagina for women, it is also ciliated, just like our respiratory tract is, to be able to move that mucus out. So we want to trap it, and we want to move it out. So you have special cells in these regions that produce mucus, right? For your mouth, you have salivary glands, right? They produce mucus as well as digestive enzymes that give it that additional name of being saliva. But it is the ciliated cells that beat and move that mucus that help move it out of that area. And again, very tight connections between the cells so nobody's slipping through. So other than lysozyme, which does what? Degrade peptidoglycan, which is found in what type of organisms? Bacteria, most effective against gram-positive bacteria. Defensins, what are these? Proteins that are going to poke holes. So what other protection do our eyes have? You guys might not tease this one out on the list. Your eyelashes help filter, but what other chemical protection? Yeah, anyone ever taste your tears? They're salty. They are, they're salty. It's also why, your dog will lick them. Because they're salty. What about your digestive tract? Well, what does your digestive tract do? Yeah, the acid in your stomach. And then that's there to digest proteins, right? But in your small intestine, there's more. What? enzymes, digestive enzymes, to digest your food. But I got news for you. Bacteria to them, to your digestive enzymes, is just food. It's going to break it down just like as if it was food, right? So the high acidic content of your stomach, the digestive enzymes, and the bile that helps with digestion again is also antimicrobial, the bile salts produced by your liver stored in your gallbladder. Your urogenital tract, now urine's going to vary, right, in pH. Could be acidic, could be basic, could be neutral, depends on what's going on in your body at the time, what you're trying to get rid of. For women, the vagina is pretty much, anyone know? It's acidic. It's acidic. It's acidic as well, which is going to inhibit microbial growth. Certain microbes. You have normal flora that actually help make it acidic. So why would we want to keep iron away from them? We already said this, right? They need it to grow, so we don't want them to have it. So we're going to keep it away from them. And so there are several molecules. We already named one of them. What is it? That keeps iron away? That's in our mucus? Lactoferrin. So lactoferrin is in our mucus, specifically in our tears and our saliva and even in breast milk, and that's partly where it gets its name, right, because of lactation. It's a secretion. Ferrin is how we store iron in our cells as well as in the liquid phase of our blood known as plasma. Transferrin, as the name implies, trans, right? It helps transport iron. This is the one found in your plasma, in the liquid phase of your blood. Iron isn't a very soluble substance either, so that's another problem. So that's why these proteins binding to it is going to help solubilize it and allow it to move through the plasma, but it's also going to help keep it away from microbes. All right, so it's a twofold functionality. Hemoglobin, as we know, is really important for our ability to bind oxygen. Okay, and again, hemoglobin, that is actually a protein, right, with the iron component within it. Myoglobin is what's found in the muscles, right, and in your heart, again, for being able to trap oxygen. And again, it's a protein that complexes with iron. And some microbes have adapted to be able to get at, for instance, hemoglobin, right? They know how to lyse our red blood cells and get to that. Fortunately, we didn't get to that when we got to the specialized media. I just had to skip over it for time. But those of you guys in lab will get to see that. Actually see what bacteria can do to red blood cells when they're after that iron component. So, I timed that perfectly. I am so proud of myself. I'm getting good. Okay, so don't tune me out though, because you got lots of homework, right? Other than reviewing what we just went over, which wasn't too much, right? It's going to get more. I want you guys to read ahead so that when I start asking these questions, right, those little triggers are going off on your brain, right? Oh, I remember that from my reading, right? Or I'm not so sure about that, so now I have the opportunity to ask Miss Erica, right? I want you to read on inflammatory response. And again, these are the fact check questions. These are our objectives, right? Read those, then read, right? And see if you can answer those questions as you read. There's 3 parts to the homework, and you guys are packing up on me. And I have 5 minutes. So stop. Okay, because this is just as important as what I was lecturing on, right, as your preparation. These are 2 excellent videos that I want you to watch. And again, if you take notes on them, if you draw, whatever helps you remember. Vanessa, there are some little words in the captioning that messed up, but that's okay. Mostly just want you to watch it. Watch it. I'm going to go over it in class. I'm going to play these in class. Okay? Then for the next section, I don't want you to read the whole section. Notice I say stop at mannose binding lictins. But again, think of these objectives. Read those as you get ready to read that section. Right? Focus in on, see if you can answer these questions or explain these things based on your reading. And then the very last thing I want you to do, there's an extra slide in there I didn't delete. It's for the next lecture. Is I want you to label in these, I've blocked out on this diagram that's in your book. I've blocked out what these are binding to. I want you guys to write it in. Because again, I want you to actively search for this information so that you remember it. I'm not going to put like a diagram like this on the test, but I am going to ask you about this information. Diagrams in your book are important, right? They're not just there for pretty pictures. They contain important information. All right, I will shut up now. No, I won't. I apologize. I left it to the end. So how many of you guys actually looked over test 2? Pat yourselves on the back for doing yourself a good. If you haven't done that yet, that's your first order of homework, right? You remember you need Respondus Lockdown Browser, so if you need to go upstairs or go to the Hibernia Center if it's not busy, come by my office during office hours. I am not posting the answers. It will tell you what you got right and what you got wrong. I am not posting the answers. That's your job. Because guess what? If you don't know it now, if you look it up, maybe you will know it come the final exam. Right? If you desperately want to know the answers, you got to come see me. Right? All right.